Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video for your Sunday, June the 11th. And we'll start off talking about the Stanley Cup Finals and Matthew Tkachuk. So he missed some time in last night's game, and clearly he's not 100%. The expectation is he will play in Game 5 on Tuesday. He's not the only one, obviously, that's dealing with injury right now. There's a lot of them. I'm going to say on both teams. I'll be interested to see when the Stanley Cup Finals done, just how many players have been dealing with injuries and just what they've been dealing with. So, Tkachuk looks like he'll play. I would think Duclair's going to play, Eichel, all that other fun stuff. And for anybody who expected anything to come out of Department of Player Safety, because Petro left the penalty box when the game was finished, nope. All right. So that being said, pivoting to the AHL playoffs, and how about the Coachella Valley Thunderbirds? So they win 4-0. Now, if the Stanley Cup Final does finish out, and if I have a chance to watch AHL Finals and do a recap or two, I will do so. But the Firebirds right now look pretty unstoppable. So they lead the series 2-0. The next 3 games are in Hershey. So for the Bears, the good news is if they can hold serve at home, they can get themselves back into this series and, potentially take control. But for the Firebirds, they have to feel really good. They won by a combined score of 9-0 in the 2 games at home. And it's 58 saves by Joey Daccord in those 2 games. So again, and I mentioned with the goaltending carousel video about how Joey Daccord and his performance for the Firebirds has to catch the attention of Ron Francis. And for a team that's had, some goaltending question marks, when you have Drieger getting hurt, Jones comes in, Jones is likely on his way out. I think Deccord's at least making the argument right now that he deserves a look as potentially the backup next year. So we'll see what Seattle does, but yeah, the Firebirds look great. The Thunderbirds are in Seattle. They're out, of course, because the Memorial Cup's done. But yeah, the Firebirds, it looks like, are going to win themselves, potentially the Calder Cup. Thunderbirds, Firebirds, it's like the 80s all over again. Anyways, I want to talk about Arizona for a little bit here too. So Arizona has picks 6 and 12 when the entry draft arrives on the 28th. And it's a good opportunity for the rebuild considering that this is a deep draft, right? The one thing, though, that's being said, they are open to potentially moving back in the draft from probably the number 12 pick. I don't think from number 6. But they could move down from that number 12 draft pick if they have a chance to acquire more future assets. So again, this is something to keep an eye on with this draft. This is considered a deep draft. I've talked in the draft prospect videos about how wildly all over the place all of the draft boards are. So it's probable that the teams have it that way as well. I'm kind of put a pause on the prospect videos because, I know Elite Prospects book has come out. I have the McKean's book looking at this year's prospects. The hockey prospect one comes out tomorrow. So I'll have more access to that. And then all of the draft lists, it looks like we're going to get final draft lists from like Bob McKenzie. I think Sportsnet's got another one coming up. And so we'll get a better idea for the favorites on who's going to go where. And then I may even modify my draft predictions because, yeah, it really is all over the place. It really is. We'll see what the Coyotes do, but this is a chance for them to acquire more assets, like I said. So we'll see what they end up deciding on that. So Ethan Bear, there's rumblings about him. Rick Dollywall, I believe, reported this first, that he likely needs shoulder surgery, and that could end up meaning he misses the start of the season. They're looking for something that would be a long-term fix. So something that he won't need another surgery, 6 months down the road or a year down the road. Something that will be a long-term fix for Ethan Bear. He's a restricted free agent this summer, and of course the Canucks don't have cap space currently for next year. They have none. So it will be interesting to see what Ethan Bear gets as a restricted free agent. Did they just give him a qualifying offer and go with that? Did they sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal? Bear was a good pickup for the Vancouver Canucks. I would be fine with him signing a 2 or 3 year deal. I think he's solid, ideally probably a 5th, 6th defenseman, but if he's top 4 this upcoming season, because, who knows what's going to happen with the Canucks this upcoming year. I know they want to add on the blue line, but again, you need cap space to do that. So him being an RFA leaves things a little bit wide open, but with surgery, and if it does eat into next season, it's another headache for Patrick Alvin. So I wanted to throw this in here too. We have 17 days left until the entry draft. So a little bit around 2.5 weeks. And then 3 days after that, we get into the RFA market, July the 1st. So we're getting very close to a lot of the really fun stuff getting started. And so I'm kind of anxious about that. The content between now and then will probably reflect that as well. Like I said, there will be a lot more prospect videos coming once all of these publications are out, once all these notes are out. There's a lot more then for me to use as research into who may end up going where. And one team to keep an eye on, of course, will be Philadelphia. So Elliot Friedman. Mark Friedman didn't report on this because he's a hockey player. Elliot Friedman's a reporter, and he did. Elliot Friedman reports that the Flyers are taking calls on Scott Laughton. He signed for a $3 million a year deal. Considering the salary cap goes up next year, that's reasonable. And while they'd like to keep him, there may very well be a price where they say, yeah, we've got to move him. And again, considering that Daniel Briere's come out with the rebuild word being in his vocabulary, there is reason to think the Flyers could make Laughton available. Nothing further with Carter Hart. Of course, there was a discussion of Carter Hart. Oh, there's something imminent. There wasn't. And so, yeah, we'll see what the Flyers end up doing. Hart may end up being one of those guys who gets moved at the draft. It just feels like a move that ends up happening at the draft where they try to maximize the return for Hart. They're looking for draft picks because they're a rebuilding team. Although, again, as I've said, Carter Hart's a good young goaltender. I would be fine with Philly holding on to him. And again, if you don't get the kind of offer you want, you're better off holding on to the asset. Also, from Elliot Friedman last night, he believes that Hanifin will be a trade target for the Calgary Flames, and that teams are going to make calls. Calgary, of course, with new management, with Craig Conroy, and with depth on the blue line. Like Shillington's supposed to be back next year. There's depth there. I really like Hanifin a lot, though. I think that if they move Hanifin and they don't get a really good deal out of it, I think they'd be crazy because I'm a fan of Noah Hanifin's. But we'll see what happens with the Flames there. And then kind of the big one, and this is a rumbling storyline that's out there. So we've talked about the Winnipeg Jets and what may happen this summer. And I know that the idea of trading Connor Hellebuyck may seem like sacrilege to those who are Jets fans, but it definitely looks like it's going to happen. And if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you know that this team has not been good enough to win in the postseason, you've got to make big moves. And I think now is the time. One criticism I've had of Cheveldayoff, basically through his entire time as the general manager of Winnipeg, I don't think he's made the adjustments necessary from one season to the next. He has kept everything the same. And it feels like they need major moves, and Hellebuyck might be forcing their hand in that he does not want to sign an extension. I've seen this through a couple of different sources now that Hellebuyck wants out. So, again, for the Winnipeg Jets, with Dubois apparently wanting out and now Hellebuyck wanting out, they've got to stop this, right? They've got to get got to get players moved. And honestly, if they haven't already, talk to these players and say, so look, who wants to stick around long term and who doesn't? And, make that separator happen where guys who want to go, you go ahead and you move them if you can. And so we'll see what happens with the Winnipeg Jets from here. Because, again, they have said they don't want to rebuild. They don't want to go through a rebuild. They don't want to retool. They want to stay in a playoff spot. But it definitely sounds like this is a fractured locker room. And that could be part of it as well. I know people are going to read this as, well, nobody wants to play in Winnipeg, which is untrue. You look at a lot of their young players. They're signed to long-term deals. And gave up UFA years to stick around. I think of guys like Connor and Ehlers and Morrissey. There are players who want to be there, so get the players who want to be there, get them signed. If there's issues in the locker room, get that straightened up immediately, and give Rick Bowness a chance to, lead this team on a redemption tour next year. Again, they're a team that made the playoffs this year. They want to stay there. It gets tricky if you're giving up guys who've got, pretty hefty contracts in a flat cap era. Hellebuyck's contract is reasonable. I would think if the Jets move him, they'll look for a goaltender back in that deal. So we'll see who wants to make that move for Hellebuyck. Let me know your predictions. Where do you think Connor Hellebuyck ends up going? Why is it Philadelphia? I'm just saying because I mentioned Carter Hart earlier, so I'm sure there will be those who say, well, couldn't Hart go to Winnipeg and Hellebuyck go to Philly? We might see something like that. Never know. Sure, why not? But let me know your thoughts. Of course, Pittsburgh might be in the market for a goaltender. Kyle Dubas might get on the phones and try to figure out a way to make it work. because Jari's on an expiring contract, and he knows that they need to improve their goaltending. And Hellebuyck is an excellent goaltender. I talked in the video earlier today about Vegas and their run. So while Hellebuyck's numbers weren't great in the first round, nobody has good numbers against Vegas in these playoffs. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.